Good morning, everybody. My name is James Baxley, and I am a member of the Apollo team. I've been working on GraphQL for a few years now, working with teams of all shapes and sizes, working with our community, and I've been able to see just a lot of things that have gone really, really well, and a few things that have gone, not so great. And today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I have seen in the industry as we've seen companies adopt GraphQL, and then talk really in depth about how we think with the Apollo GraphQL platform, we can help to make your lives of building things easier and better, and honestly, just more fun. Like, I like building things. Who in here is like an actual engineer who gets to build like apps day in and day out? All right, that's a good number of people. So I want to make your lives more fun and that you can enjoy your work and just do things better. So I'm going to talk about what it takes to manage a graph. Graph, in this case, is just your GraphQL application, but it's a little bit more than that. The graph that we're going to talk about is just how your company manages data. The benefit here of GraphQL is that you get a single source of truth, and your clients can come in and consume it, they can build on top of it, and really what you want to talk about is how do we manage that interaction? How do we make sure that our client apps and our servers all work together, and that graph is kind of the core center part of it. And I'm going to show you really in depth, we're going to get a little bit technical here, kind of showing and walking through some of the stuff that we've seen earlier in the conference and yesterday, and I hope you'll enjoy the ride with me. So yeah, what does it take to get the most out of your graph? You have a GraphQL app, it's up and running, you can like go to Graphical or GraphQL Playground, you can see your schema, it's really exciting. Your clients are starting to build on it, you're in production. Things seem really cool, really great, you've been able to build some great things. But then, as we've talked about earlier today with Garrett's great talk, as well as yesterday, you want to be able to keep building on that. Like, it's like, okay, I can really quickly get something out, but how do I maintain that? How do I keep going? How do I keep building? And how do I make sure that what I'm going to build is going to work really well? Ultimately, how do you do GraphQL right? When we talk about building a product, there's really kind of three core phases of a feature, right? This is not rocket science. This isn't anything new. You have local development. I've gotten the specs. Hopefully, you have something as magical as what Adam showed yesterday with this whole like crazy infrastructure that makes it you don't have to even do work to build something. But if you don't, you open your editor up and you start writing some code. You test it locally, make sure it's working. And after that, you want to go into production, right? You have a feature, you want to ship it, test it out, make sure it isn't just a works on my machine kind of situation. So you have like a nice continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, right? None of this is brand new stuff. And then when it goes into production, you want to make sure that it works and that you're monitoring it and that you can safely move on to the next feature. You want to have a really reliable production system. That way you're not like putting out fires instead of enjoying your coffee the first thing in the office, or those 3 a.m. page duty calls that we all are aware of. It's just something you don't want to have happen, especially with a GraphQL app, because it's the core part of how your whole product line works. So let me show you a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. So this is our new FullSec tutorial app. So if you have colleagues or team members who are just now getting started with GraphQL, I really recommend checking out this resource. It's a great little app. It's not too complex. What's cool is this is built on top of existing REST API. So I work for Apollo. We like space-themed things, so we have Space Explorer. And this is built on top of the SpaceX REST API. So we have a nice little app. We've got some local state. We can add something to a cart before we check out, go in and check out and book it. And sure enough, it is just a little GraphQL API running locally on my machine right now. Okay? So this is just pulling from the SpaceX REST endpoint. So this very well could be just how your app is built. Like you have your existing services like Garrett was talking about. You don't want to throw all this stuff away. You want to be able to like build iteratively on top of what you have. So there's a good chance that what your graph looks like in production right now is going to be something similar. All right, so how do you add a new feature? How do I actually go in and start building something? Really what we want to be able to do is we want to take that graph, we want to take this information we have, and ideally we want to bring it into our day-to-day work. We don't want to keep context switching back and forth. Like whoever has gone from their editor to open up GraphQL or some other like documentation system and like ended up in a 30-minute Twitter like bypass, right? Is it just me or does everyone else here do that, right? Like they're good breaks, but ideally you can kind of stay a little bit more focused, especially if it's an enjoyable development experience. So what we're asking for here is I want that insight, I want that information at my fingertips. As I'm, like, the time from me having a thought about how I want to build something to having the information I need to build it is a very critical time. And anything that we can do day in and day out to shorten that time is just going to make things better. Not only are we going to be able to build products faster, so our team's going to be happy, our users are going to be more happy, but honestly, it just leaves us less unsure in our day-to-day life. It makes building things more fun. And it's like, I think the reason why TypeScript adoption has grown so much isn't because everyone's like, I love static typing, and ooh, but it's like, I get type ahead. Like, great, this is cool. I can build things faster. This is really nice. I think that you really need that for your whole data graph. You need to be able to do that to understand what's going on and how you can actually work with the data in your apps. This isn't just static typing. This is real-world typing. And all this is powered by a schema. Like, this is not something new. Who in here is actually in production with the GraphQL app right now? See, every year those numbers grow, and it makes my heart sing, because I want to make sure you're successful. That's what I do. But so you have a schema at this point. You've got a schema in production. That's really, really great. Get that to your team. Get that into their editor. Make sure that they can use it. Make sure they can understand it. And that's why with the Apollo GraphQL platform, the schema registry and schema awareness is just part of what you get. There is no cost to it. It's something that we want for everyone who's building on GraphQL to have, because it just makes it better. You already have the schema. It's part of the design of GraphQL. So why limit that to graphical or to some other kind of like documentation system? So let's go build something. Let's just hop along over here. All right, so let's see. Let me make this where you can actually see it. All right, how's the size look for everybody in the back? Back of the balcony, you can see this OK? Thumbs up, great. Yeah, like Sasha said, I'll be doing some live typing today. My fingers are very nervous, so I'll probably typo a lot. Plus, I can't really spell, so I won't be as sharp as Adam, but I'm still pretty excited. So you may have seen this yesterday, whether it was in Jeff's talk or Adam's talk or Peggy. We're very excited about it, so we've been showing it a lot. This is VS Code, and this is the Apollo GraphQL plugin for VS Code. So you get some really nice things out of the box that is just, again, the design point of GraphQL. It's how GraphQL was designed to work. It's, I think, one of the reasons why the adoption has been so strong. I can know the type. I can come in and like see the response types. I can get this really nice type ahead where I know what I need to type in my editor. I don't have to context switch back and forth. I know the return types, like email is going to be a string. That's really great. It's awesome, right? Like immediately, this is so much better than a REST endpoint or even GraphQL apps just today where you have to go back and forth. Being able to come in and actually see things like, I'm referencing a fragment, what fields are actually on that fragment? It'd be great to just know, instead of me having to go back and forth and know, like, what fields am I actually bringing in here? Like, don't jump around your code base, just use the code base. And then beyond that, so that's a query. Let's see, click. No. Login. Weird. OK, well, that's still going to work. So I have a mutation here. Mutations have arguments. I want to make sure that the variables that I'm sending in are going to be the right thing. So with the schema awareness, again, you have all the information you need to know at your fingertips about the requirements of these types. But this may not actually be the mutation that I want to see. I really would love to actually see the schema while I'm writing things to know what my other fields are. So I can just peek into it. This is like, it's an in-memory copy of my entire schema. And I can jump around it all I want to. I can go from operation into the schema at any point in time. And again, it makes it that much more fun. I'm right here. I'm in my editor. I know all of my options. It makes me feel smarter. At least makes me feel smarter, because I'm not that smart in the first place. But the tooling makes me feel strong. So, and then I'll switch into the launches one. All right. So this gets really exciting. This is really cool. But then there's more to that, right? It isn't just your graph. It isn't just the shape of your graph. If you're in production, you have usage of that graph. So you want to be able to see, like, how is this thing actually performing? What does it look like to add fields in? And so you can get these annotations. And please excuse the crazy long number. That was just some testing that I was doing this morning. And it was 6 minutes long. I was seeing how long I could keep that open. But it works. Like, it brings this information to you. So as you add fields into your queries, you actually get to know, like, how long is this going to take. And just think about that for a second. You're building a UI component. You're rendering a list of items. And you write the list. How often do you think about loading state? You're like, OK, well, I'll just put like a loading spinner in there. Well, if you actually know the performance metrics of what that is going to look like, it can radically change how you design even just your loading states or your interactive states. Because if you're sub 200 milliseconds or sub 100 millisecond threshold, it drastically changes what you need to show to the user to make the app feel fast and snappy. Beyond that, as you add fields, it's not always very clear what a field is going to do. Like, the beauty of GraphQL is that data can kind of come from anywhere and be all merged in together. But there's no way for me to know, looking at the shape of the graph, that is booked is going to go to a whole other data system. because it doesn't need to for my product. My product wants it all as one thing, but the reality is that the workload is that adding that field is going to make my app a little bit slower here. Not a ton, but a little bit. So then it's a question of, do I actually need this here? Am I overfetching? Am I early fetching it? Should I come in here and defer this one directive that way, or defer this one field? That way I'm not like adding extra cost to it. Then you see this client directive. You want to be able to do the same thing for local state. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you that we actually know what the return type of this field is. This is taking our remote schema, right, the graph that our server is providing, and it's merging it directly with our client-side schema. So when we talk about one data graph, like the hidden thing is that it's not just one data graph. You have one server data graph, but every application may have its own unique view of that data graph and its own unique extension points of that data graph. And you want your tooling to be able to respond to that and know that. So sure enough, I can come in here and see that like my local state, I know exactly what the types of that are. And how do I do that? Well, I can just write my GraphQL schema for my client. I can extend the remote types, and I know exactly what I'm going to be able to get. Like I said, I typo a lot, but I also get hungry a lot. And I type launch as lunch, like every time I've ever worked on this app. And I always end up like saving it, and then I get a bug, and it's really mad at me. But I don't do that anymore because I type lunch, and then it says like, hey, I can't find it, and it really needs to say, go get a snack, and then come back and keep working. But we haven't quite gotten that smart yet. We're working on it. But you have big teams, right? And teams grow, and you have all these different features. If you've ever gone through and tried to debug a Redux reducer or an action creator to try to figure out, like, what was this thing trying to do? It was written 2 years ago. What in the world is this thing supposed to happen? You can write documentation in here. So I'm going to write Adam Neary did this, blame him. Okay? So now, like, when someone comes back to this code base, they're going to know exactly what they need to do here. But it'd be really great if I could actually just find everywhere in my code base that is using this field. And sure enough, I can. I can find all the references. So anywhere that any component is using a local state, I now can just jump to them, okay, and find all their uses of them. And I can see that someone's using it wrong. And again, like, hey, Adam Neary did this. Blame him. It's kind of one of my rules in life. But I can fix it, right? This returns a launch type. That's what it's telling me here. It says you're returning back an ID. Like, that's not right. You need a selection set. So I can come in here, and now I know immediately what I have. I haven't saved a file. I haven't opened this file. I'm doing it in line while I'm designing my schema. And I can come in and make these changes here. Or I could actually jump to it. And again, I haven't clicked save at all. This is all just working. And that's really great for my one graph idea, but my graph changes. And let's see, launches. So what do I do when it changes? I want to be able to see the new version of the graph immediately as I work in. So I want to be able to select a new schema tag. And again, I don't know why the, let's see if I got that right. I did. Sorry about the VS Code not showing fully. But what I just did is I switched to a new published schema tag. This is an upcoming version of my schema. And immediately, I see that I have an issue coming up, that this field has been deprecated. Right? So every day when I open my editor, I know that the data that I'm working with is going to be the latest and greatest of what my application is actually going to run on, including things like beta branches or new ideas. So sure enough, there's a full name here. Because it's GraphQL, I can alias it. I'm back to doing my job. The backend team's really happy. We're not supporting old legacy code. And as a developer, I don't have to maintain an email thread or a Slack channel or talk to the backend team or front-end team. It all is just connected together. So that's the kind of front-end world that I want to work in. It takes the idea of like building a feature from days down to hours because you have all that information ready for you. And now that you're building things so much faster, you want to be able to actually deploy them faster. You want to be able to get them out into production because your product cycle is going to be sped up. So I had a lot of people here say that they have a GraphQL production. Who actually manages the schema? Who in here like is not front-end actually builds the schema? Great, awesome. Have you ever looked into your client code base to figure out how it's using your schema? Just like done a big grep and say like what operations are being used, right? It's the only way really to know how the thing is going to be used so I can know what I can do to change it. Or I'm left only adding, and I get this like indefinitely growing large schema, and that sucks. That's hard to maintain. My code base is littered with old stuff that I don't want to support anymore. That's not the world that we should be building in. It's not maintainable. It's not scalable as a team. So what you want to be able to do is say, hey, I'm going to change my schema. What is that going to look like? What is the diff between that schema? We're all very comfortable with the idea of a diff in our day-to-day life as engineers. So we want to be able to apply that to our graph. We want to know what is actually being changed. But the reality is it doesn't actually really matter what's being changed. It matters who's it going to impact. We build apps for users, so we want to make sure that whenever we do make a change, we're not breaking our users' experience. We're keeping our product moving forward, we're keeping our customers happy, and we're keeping our engineering manager and our bosses and our whole company happy because they're not getting support tickets of like, hey, the app just broke. What happened? It's like, oh yeah, I removed a field. Shoot, didn't think anyone was using it. Well, now you don't have to worry about that anymore with the GraphQL platform. And the way that this works is that with the Apollo GraphQL platform, you'll be able to log traces. And a trace is just a unit of work on the graph. It says, I have a client, they want some data, trace it and figure out what's happening. What fields are they using? What client is it coming from? What was the timing look like? And with that, with this giant collection of data, whenever you go to make a change, whenever you go to diff this field, so you see we removed like average duration millisecond here in this example. What we're going to do is we're going to take all those traces based off of whatever window of time your support window is, like 1 month, 2 years. It doesn't matter. We'll take all of that, and you make a change, and we'll take the past 2 years of data, and we'll run it through and see if you use that field by any client. And if you did, it'll tell you, it'll show up right nice in here and say, hey, the 1.3 version of your iOS app, it was still using that field. So if you want to support it, then you need to not change this field anymore. This just takes the time to reviewing and QA. This is like QA in your pull request, right? Like, come on, that's pretty amazing. And it's built into your system, right? This can't work if you have to go open some other process, you have to go into some other browser and try and figure out what's going on. This needs to be part of your Git process. So you want to open up a pull request in GitHub, where you already have your continuous integration stuff reporting back, and you want to know how that impact is going to come to your schema as well. With the schema validation system with the Apollo GraphQL platform, it's ready to go. You turn on the GitHub app, and you start sending the data, and now you have this amazing tool to keep you from breaking things. So let's see what this looks like. All right, so here's a pull request that I made. This is that same FullSec tutorial app. You can check out this on our Apollo GraphQL org, and you can see this pull request. And you can see that I have a couple red arrows here, or red X's. And what happened is, and I'll show you the actual diff, is I removed a field that was being used. And so I got all my GitHub status, came back, and it said that the service check for the Space Explorer, it failed. It didn't work. And there's actually a details link, and I'll click on that in just a second. It shows you where you can go and actually see the full information there. And then I was able to take that information, know what changed, and come back and make a different change. And now everything is green. I can merge the pull request. Should we merge it on stage? Does anybody want me to merge this pull request? No? A little bit. I merged one last year that was like actually exciting because it was Apollo Client 2.0, but I'm excited about this one, so there we go. So where would those links have actually taken you? Well, they would have taken you to the schemas checks page in Engine. And this was that initial publish, that initial like run of that check. And sure enough, I would have broken 5 queries across multiple clients. So my iOS app, my Android app, and my web app all would have been broken if I would have made that change. And I can actually know exactly what change was going to happen here, right? I was going to remove the name field and the ID field. And there's something about that that would have broken these queries. So I can look at these queries and determine like exactly what field it is, and I can know what's going on. And because of that, I was able to come back and say, OK, well, let me just deprecate the name field. I'll make a new one that's called full name, and I can trust that my team is going to get that information tomorrow or today when they open their editor for the next time, and they'll make the change over time, and we can phase it out. But I still remove the ID field. So like that statically is a breaking change, but no one was using it, so it doesn't really matter. We keep our schema clean, we keep it tight, and it's easy for us to maintain and make for more reliable systems. And with that, we're in production. Congratulations, we did it. We shipped a feature. It's really exciting. Took no time at all. Not as quite as fast as Airbnb does it, but we're getting there. So now that we're in production, we have a GraphQL app in production. We have clients, right? That's, again, a graph isn't really useful if it's just sitting up there nice and pristine. You need people using it. And a client is an app. It's your iOS app, your Android app. And it works, the contract it has with your GraphQL server is these operations, right? Like that's the contract. Schema plus operations is how we work. So you need to be able to understand not just the operations, but who owns them, what version of the app owns them, what does it look like to monitor a client. So you're in production, you need to be able to see things like what clients are using my app. Are they the iOS app, the Android app? How much are they being used? Do I have unauthorized access or somebody that I don't know? Is some like rando on the internet using my GraphQL app? I should probably know about that, right? Ultimately, these production tools are meant to help you make your GraphQL app more predictable, more reliable, and more secure. And that predictability part is a really key thing because it has a huge impact on how all your services work. If you can know ahead of time what the shape of my operations are going to look like and what clients are going to be related to, it helps you to do really important things, like make sure you have the right scale for your database systems or the right caching in place. And really, it's that you know what your day is going to look like, right? You're not going to get that PagerDuty call because someone added a random field that you didn't know was going to happen. And you also want to be able to secure your GraphQL app. You want to be able to say, hey, we're in production. Only my product teams can use this app. I don't want to just expose my graph to the internet. I don't want to have introspection turned on. I don't want to allow arbitrary queries. I want to come in and say, like, all right, my team, you can use whatever you want to. I trust you. But anyone else, you can't do it. We want to keep this nice and secure. And with the operation registry as part of the Apollo GraphQL platform, you can just do that. All right, so what does that look like? So this is probably going to be the riskiest demo, so we'll see what happens here. Because I'm going to try and ship a bug. We'll see what happens here. All right, so I've got engine reporting coming up. No traffic right now because this is a sample app. So what I've got here is I have my server, and then I'm getting ready to ship a buggy build. Okay? So I forgot to close a while loop in this code base, and now my Android app is just like hammering my endpoint. This isn't an app I need to support anymore. I don't know what to do about it, but it's got all these operations, right? And it's just like coming in, hitting my app, it's hitting my downstream services. And this is a surprise. Ultimately, it's not even that this is a bad thing. This isn't an attacker, although it could be. This is a surprise. This is something that I wasn't expecting. It's a shape of an operation that I didn't know about, and I really don't want it to happen. And so as a backend engineer or as a team that maintains the schema, I want to be able to control this. I want to be able to connect my server to have full knowledge of all of my client apps and all of the operations that they work with. And that's why we have the operation registry as part of the GraphQL platform, is that you can plumb these things together and you can see it work. So you can see on the left here, the only change I'm going to make to this entire service is this 3-line change. That's going to say, hey, when you start up, I want you to get all the operations that you would expect from my company. I want you to pull them down. And then I want you to use that information for a lot of good benefits. And what here I'm going to turn on is I want to forbid people from using anything except for what I tell them to use. So I'm going to save this. And you're going to see this buggy build is going to go, it's going to get some connection timeouts for a second as the app reboots up. All right, there they are. So app just restarted. We rolled out our new container in prod. And actually, it wouldn't really happen in prod because we have really amazing tools these days, so that doesn't happen. But the buggy build is still trying to send stuff, but now we're getting 500s. Over here, sorry. All right, it should move up because this thing's in the way. But that app is like not actually hitting our downstream data sources anymore. We've made its queries invalid just with that one command because it's not part of our client registry. And so you can see, let me move this to the last hour instead of the last day. All right, so I had a spike. See that initial spike of request? And then I turned on the operation registry, and now it's starting to go back down. So immediately, down here you can see it was hitting my backend data sources, and now it's not anymore. We still know it's coming in. We don't want to like close our eyes to these clients. We want to tell them, no, you can't do this. This won't work for me. But there's so much more than this. The predictability of knowing the operations lets me do things like optimize my queries and split them apart so I know what's going to go on. It lets me know how much I can scale my database clusters to make sure that I have the right size to support my teams. And really, as a backend engineer, this kind of system just makes things safer for me. And beyond that, I know who's using my app. I know the shape of it. I know as a team member, I build the iOS app. That's really all I care about. Like, if your support app is being buggy, it's not my problem. And really, it's not that big of a deal from a business value standpoint. But if the iOS app starts getting a whole bunch of errors, that's a big deal. I want to be able to see that. I want to surface it. I want to understand it. And that's how I can manage my app better, manage my graph better, because I need that insight and that information. And I want to be able to take that and do things with it. I want it to be actionable. Ultimately, none of this stuff is crazy mad scientist changes to GraphQL. GraphQL is really, really well designed. It has a lot of amazing things that make it really well suited for how we build applications. What we want to do at Apollo, and the reason why we announced the GraphQL platform that you can start using today, you can go in and get the VS Code right now, the VS Code integration, is because we want to take those things that make GraphQL really nice. We want to scale it to the size of your company. Garrett did a great talk earlier this morning and talked about the real value of GraphQL isn't just the technology, it's how your teams can work together better. So with this kind of platform, it's taking the micro benefits of GraphQL, knowing the validation, knowing an operation in schemas, and supplying that across an entire organization. And even beyond organizations, as I consume the GitHub GraphQL endpoint and link it together with my own product, I want to be able to know when GitHub deprecates a field. I want to be able to know it in my editor. I want to work on the global graph of how data works in all these applications. And that's what the GraphQL platform is here to do. It's here to help scale your entire company as you manage your graph. It's to take that central point of knowledge, that schema for everybody, and put it into their tools, help them know what's going on, help them to see and evolve that, and keep that productive and clean and effective. And it's helped you to make sure that you can always change your system. You know, Jeff talked yesterday about the 10 values of doing GraphQL right, and one of those was don't prematurely build your schema out. And that is a really strong key principle. But ultimately, you need to be able to control how your schema grows and how your operations change against that thing. If you're locked down into every decision you've ever made, indefinitely supporting it forever, then GraphQL is going to become a big risk factor in your organization. You're going to be able to say, like, hey, we have stuff from 2 years ago. It just doesn't work anymore, but there's no way for us to take it off because we don't know who it's going to impact. And now, with Apollo, you do know, and you can feel really safe, really comfortable with making those changes. So there's 3 new things we're kind of announcing, rolling out as the initial launch of the platform today. There's the Apollo VS Code editor extension. This starts with VS Code. We'll be bringing more later this year. I personally use Vim, so we'll be working on that later this week, hopefully. So any Vim users in the crowd? Hey, my people. We also have GitHub integration in this schema validation. So the schema validation works on your CI environment. So if you don't use GitHub, you'll still get these nice exit codes. You'll still get the link to engine where you can go and view it. But if you do use GitHub, then you get even a better experience where it's right in line in your pull request. Support for things like GitLab and Bitbucket are in the works so that no matter where you maintain your source code, we can be there to help you make sure that the changes you're making are the right changes. And then there's also the operation registry and client identity. So starting today, you can actually know who's using your graph, how they're using it, what fields, what versions, and you can support those things indefinitely as long as you need to. The reason we do this is because we really think there's a magical moment here for teams. We think there's a point where you're no longer in this constant state of conflict or flux about what is happening with my product. What does support view as a Netflix title versus the engineering team that's building out Netflix.com? What you want to be able to have is this one graph for your company. And with that idea, this idea of a common language, teams can work together better, they can work together faster, and they can build better things for their end users. So we really believe at Apollo that GraphQL and this platform we're building is going to empower you to be able to do that better at your company and build better products for your users. And we want to make sure that you can do GraphQL right at any scale, from starting with that tutorial to a team of, an enterprise team of like 30 different or teams within the organization. That coordination, that skill set, we don't want there to be any drop-off between, hey, I did this weekend, it was really exciting, it was really cool, to we have 5 million users hitting our app every day, how do we maintain it, how do we control that? Apollo wants to be there for you every step of the way. So I really appreciate the time to be able to talk to you here. I've had the honor of working with a number of you over the past 2 years. I hope that I'll get the opportunity to work with you going forward. One of the things that my team does at Apollo is we work with companies who are adopting GraphQL. We've had the benefit of working with companies like Airbnb or Brand Heroes or SurveyMonkey or a number of teams who are adopting GraphQL, and they're the ones who helped to build these features. These weren't like ivory tower things that we said this would be great for GraphQL. This was, hey, we deployed a bug into our production app. What do we do? How can we fix that? And then we come back and said, you know what? We could probably make that better. We can work with you to make that safer. So if your company is investing in GraphQL and is making that adoption, we would love the opportunity to talk with you and to work with you so we can build what you need to feel comfortable going into production and maintaining your application. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.